Everybody, welcome to the Healthy SBC podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Sutton. I'm here at LSUS Shreveport, LSU Shreveport, and I'm talking to Aaron Adams. We're in the performance lab here at the HEP building, and Aaron, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, man, no problem.
Awesome. So if you want to just introduce who you are and what you do here at LSUS, that would be awesome.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Aaron Adams. I am the Human Performance Lab Manager, as well as the collegiate weightlifting coach, and we also do all the strength and conditioning through the lab for all of the sports teams here. So baseball, men's and women's soccer, men's and women's basketball, as well as women's tennis. So it's very busy all the time, which is fun.
Yeah, I love it. And so just to give some context, you did this, y'all are doing some kind of weight training seminar here,
Yeah.
and I saw a bunch of your Instagram videos, so you're Instagram famous, so I texted you and said, hey man, let's do it. You're like, yeah, let's. So,
yeah, absolutely.
I love it. So how did you get here at LSUS? Like, what background do you have to do this job?
So originally I came here as a student,
Okay.
and that was in 2006. I was a weightlifter, an Olympic weightlifter, and if anyone knows the Shreveport area really well, they know of Dr. Pierce, who has pumped out hundreds of weightlifters,
Right.
most notably Kendrick Ferris, who's a three-time Olympian. So if you've watched the Olympics or the news recently, he's all over it, which is cool. So Dr. Pierce recruited me to come down here to school to be a weightlifter. So I got my degree in biology from LSUS, then I left, went to go get my master's degree in acupuncture. I started a startup company, like an app basically, writing computer algorithms for fitness programs.
Awesome.
Did that, went through a series round, raised enough money, built the app and everything, sold it and got rid of it and all that. And then right around that time was when LSUS called and said, hey, we have an opportunity for a job. You might be interested in it. And it all worked out. My wife's from here, so it was like super easy. And my mother-in-law lives around the corner, so we made the jump to move back to Shreveport.
Awesome. Well, that worked out great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. So I kind of knew you were a weightlifter because you were coaching. I figured you were. I didn't know you had any background in acupuncture, so that's really cool to find out.
Oh, yeah.
Did you practice in acupuncture? Do you still do some of that?
Yeah, so I practiced in acupuncture in Maryland for probably 3 years. Really enjoyed it, loved it, and I was doing it while I was doing the startup thing. So I had been managing gyms a lot based off of my experience here while I was going through grad school. Got through grad school, was doing the acupuncture and the gym management thing, and then found a solution to problems that people were having. So then I jumped into that, and my background is extremely weird, and
I love that.
it jumps around quite a bit. So going from like acupuncture to like data science, like figuring out how to write Python code and actually code in apps and all that,
Right.
and then building algorithms in MATLAB and which engineering software. It's
No, so I just saw a guy. I was over at More Coffee,
Yeah.
and he writes algorithms, and he actually taught a seminar here at LSUS a few weeks ago about using different AIs.
Yeah.
And none of it was ChatGPT, which I use all the time.
Mhm.
And so I said, man, I was trying to get your stuff to work and I can't figure it out. And he's like, well, I've been thinking about doing this. I was like, man, if you would put a program together that you could sell to physical therapy, any business, and because he got 3,000 leads in a month with
Yeah.
this program. I was
Okay.
like, dude, they would pay for that in a heartbeat.
Yep.
I said, I'll pay you right now for it if you can just do it for me because we're friends.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you just validated a business idea.
I mean, yeah. That's
But
what it is.
it's funny, sometimes we jump from thing to thing and do that.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've learned in my career and my life in general is that everything is actually related to something else. So like, I mean, with physical therapy as an example, like physical therapy doesn't stop when you leave the office.
Right.
Like you're supposed to continue to do those physical therapy things, and then, prehab versus rehab, and all of a sudden that becomes, we used to say holographic of life. Like the cool thing about a hologram is you take a little piece out, the whole image is still in that little piece.
Right.
So all of us are really doing that. We're all doing everything. It's just we call it physical therapy.
Right.
We call it acupuncture.
That's
We
right.
call it coaching. But in reality, all we're trying to do is help other people out. Like
Yeah.
we're all individuals of service, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Especially in Shreveport.
Oh, yeah.
It's like that's like the big community thing about this place, whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are part of a community, and we should be serving each other.
Oh, man, that's huge. So I used to have a podcast called the Servant PT Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And that's all I talked about was servant leadership, and I just interviewed people all over the country that did it.
Yep.
And then one day I was sitting there, it was like at church on a Sunday, and I was like, why am I interviewing people outside of Shreveport Bossier?
Mhm.
Like there's hundreds, if not thousands of people here that I can interview.
Oh yeah.
Like right now I have like a list of people that are waiting for me to come interview them or have said they will, or I want to go see, because there's so many servant leaders here in this area. But I love what you said about the hologram, because like in PT school, I remember we had a class one time, I think we had physiology and then modalities. And we used a physiology, somebody used a physiology answer in modality and said, no, that's the right answer, but that's the physiology answer. And I'm like, no, bro, this is the
that's
same.
Still the right answer.
We're still the right answer.
Yeah.
Like, and so they're just separating it, and life's not like that, right?
No, not at all.
So you're coaching, you're lifting weights, you're doing admin stuff. It's all part of the bigger picture of serving people.
I mean, coaching is a great example of that. I mean, what's the difference between coaching and teaching?
Nothing.
There's no difference. And the same thing, like when we go into a physiology class that I teach, we don't just learn physiology, right? We learn a little bit of psychology too. We might learn a little bit of biomechanics as well, and why things happen. And so often it drifts, like when I'm teaching class or even coaching, so often those things drift into real life things that are happening. Where somebody understands the letting go of anger, right? It's like there's a physiological reason of anger and what that does to your system. There's the psychological reason that anger started in the first place. There's also how do you let that anger out in a physical aspect.
Absolutely.
All of those things are still anger. But we're not actually talking about the thing. We're talking about this one little niche instead of looking at it as a whole.
Absolutely.
And that's holistic healthcare, right? That's the well care versus sick care argument.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so what I do with concierge physical therapy, trying to get people, I go to their homes and office, and I'm calling it more well care than healthcare, because healthcare is retroactive, right? I want to be proactive. Like, why can't we just acupuncture somebody like when they have a pain, not when it's like you can't lift your arm?
Oh yeah, because insurance won't cover it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why I don't take insurance.
And that's why I stopped being an acupuncturist.
There you go. So, but it's crazy because everything we do is so retroactive and reactive in especially in healthcare.
Yeah,
if we could just do things proactively, like if we get somebody down the pipeline, like say here, where you teach somebody how to lift weights, and then it's a lifelong thing that they do,
right? Instead
of waiting till they're 50 and they go have whatever, they meet a doctor and say, hey, you got heart issues, you need to lift weights now. Yep. Now we got to figure it out.
What was the Rumi quote? People will work their entire life sacrificing their health. Yep. And then when they're done sacrificing their health, they have to pay all that money back to cure it. Yeah. I mean, why? Yeah. You wasted all that time. Go outside. Yes, it's hot. Go outside.
I had this conversation this morning. I went on a walk yesterday. I think it was 5 o'clock. It's miserable. The seventh circle of hell. And I said, once you start sweating, it's fine. Yeah. It's just that I don't want to sweat. But as soon as you start, who cares? Yeah. You're hot now.
At that point, you're
and then you go get some water and you're cool.
That's the sunk cost fallacy, right?
That's exactly right. But talk about a little bit, Aaron, why it's important to be strong.
In what aspect?
Well, just in general with people. Like, I mean, I know you're dealing with high level athletes. I see some of them out here. What I pulled up today, and they make me embarrassed to walk around. But no, like people like you and I that we've gotten a little bit older. We're getting kind of into our career. But why is it still important to stay strong?
There's a lot of physiological things that happen with strength basis, right? Like it's been shown, study after study. There's a certain point where when muscle mass declines to a certain point of your overall body weight, it's only a matter of time before death happens, right? And they do the same thing with balance. There's actually a really interesting study about balancing, and once your balance goes past a certain point, your the odds of you living for more than 1 year go down drastically, and it continues to do that. So strength for health reasons is very good. I like to think of that less and think of more of the psychological things that go into being strong. Okay. Especially being a parent, a child of it, like I have a mom and a dad and everything. And then being someone in the community, when I lift heavy things, I know that I can deal with a lot more. And I chose to lift that heavy thing. I decided I was going to pick up 300 pounds, and I made that happen. I did that. Right. So when things come up that are a lot harder, or physically less difficult, mentally more difficult, I can look back to that, because training isn't just like from the neck down or the neck up. It's both. Right. It's a both and conversation, not an either or. Right. So strength training for, like the geriatric population, or even like the middle-aged population, which I would consider like mid-30s, middle-aged at this point based on life expectancy. It's still important, but more so, why start strength training when you're 13, 12? Well, physiologically, your body will upregulate a lot of different transcription factors. Sorry, I realize that's big.
No, I like it.
The body will upregulate a lot of different processes in order to adapt to that stressor.
Right.
That lasts your whole life because you did it while you were going through puberty.
Right.
That's a big deal. It's the same thing when the Olympics are on right now.
Yeah.
God, I wish I would have started gymnastics when I was 8.
Yeah.
Well, we have that opportunity now
Sure.
to do that for some people, to our kids, to our neighbors. And it's never too late to start being strong.
Right.
And if you fancy yourself a really, really strong, mental-headed person, go pick up some weights.
That's right.
See how long you can do that day after day, week after week, month after month.
Yeah.
You know, the arguments are always like, it's dangerous. Like, walking on the street is more
Absolutely.
dangerous than lifting a weight.
Absolutely.
Now, get a coach, but also,
Yeah,
right? Like, do
Right.
it the right way. But I think there's so much more than just the physical demands of strength training that really matter. It's more of the psychosocial ones. Like, think about, I think about this a lot. My son and daughter, who are 5 and 7, they get to see daddy lift weights, and they get to see daddy help other people lift weights.
Right.
I don't know what that does to them psychologically.
Right.
I don't. I hope that it's really helping them, and the research would tend to support that as well.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's why I think it's important to lift weights. It's not just the physical stuff. It's so much bigger.
You know, it's funny, when I was a kid, so I'm 42, and so back in the late 90s, they would say, okay, well, you don't need to let your kids lift weights at 10.
Yeah.
Or
Muscle
9,
down.
you know,
It's
all this,
gonna stunt their
all this
growth.
crazy
Yeah.
stuff. And so my kids are 10 and 12, and they've been in jiu-jitsu for a couple of years. Now, my daughter's 12. She's like, Dad, I think I'm done with
Over
jiu-jitsu.
it,
I'm like, yeah, cool. But now my son's wanting to learn how to box and kickbox and all this stuff. And I said, if you want to learn that, that's great. Like, this is the time I want you to start that
Right, yeah.
at 10. Because if you love it, you're going to be a pretty elite athlete.
Yeah, we
15.
we have the chance that
You
if
know,
the genetics are all
yeah.
supporting that, like,
Yeah.
we're in good shape.
Exactly. So I love that. I don't know if you know Mark Ripito.
Yes, I know Mark
you know
Ripito.
So I didn't get into PT school the first time I applied, and I moved to Wichita Falls, and I was going to get my master's,
Okay.
and I absolutely hated it. But I went to his gym all the time, and because I was a grad assistant,
Nice.
and he did a seminar on his starting strength book,
baby.
and he said, being strong is the most important thing in this earth. It's more important than God. You know, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then he knew I wanted to be a PT, and so he said I was a crook because PTs are crooks still.
Yeah.
But I love that time that I spent there because he's a genius. And
Okay.
then Lon Kilgore that's there with him is
Yep.
just a genius as well.
Ironically, Dr. Pierce worked with Lonnie and
Did he?
Mark and knows all of those guys.
That's so funny.
Dr. Pierce wrote the book on like a lot of different strength training with youth athletes and disproved all of the things that people had
That people
said.
thought.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
love
It's
that.
crazy.
I love that. But it was funny to me, like when I was, I don't know, I was probably 25 when I heard him say that, and I thought, that's kind of ridiculous. I don't know. But now at 42, I think he wasn't really far off.
No.
I mean, it may not be the most important thing, but it's right
It's
up
up there.
It's high.
Even with a lot of the athletes that we have in here, especially like soccer, who I think almost our entire men's soccer team, minus one person, is international.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these kids have played high level soccer in other countries
Right.
that have never touched a weight in their life. When they define fitness, they define it for how fast and for how long can you run.
Right.
And in reality, I tell them this all the time. Us as human beings were made to run. That is our advantage, is the ability to sweat and lose heat better than any other animal.
Mm-hmm.
We chase prey, right? That's
Right.
what we did for hundreds, thousands of years.
Sure.
Getting strong is actually the hard part. If you can get really, really strong, getting in shape, fitness, like for something
simple,
easy.
Yeah.
No problem. 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Getting strong takes a lifetime.
It does. It does. I mean, when I go back to running, I started yesterday, and but I can start back, and within a few weeks, I can run a pretty good distance.
Yeah.
Even though I'm overweight,
Yep.
I haven't been doing anything. But when you go back to strengthening, it's like I put my hands on a bar, and I'm like, oh, that 135 feels like 235.
This is how much?
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
what is this again?
Yep.
So I agree 100%. But I love that you talked about how, once we hit that certain level of threshold of no muscle mass, like our life expectancy plummets. And then the same thing with balance, because I see that all the time.
Oh yeah.
I've been a PT for 15 years, and once somebody starts falling, like it's just a matter of time before they hit their head on something or whatever, all the other things
need
start.
surgery and
because your body starts to shut down.
right, and it can't put in that energy that it normally could to heal. It's just trying to keep you alive.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big, everything is a muscle. Like our entire circulatory system is based off of the ability to get blood back to the heart, which happens through muscle contraction. It's not just an automatic
That
thing.
just suck back up there.
Yeah, it's like you actually have to move your muscles in order to do that. That's how that pump works.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that, and that's why you see like geriatric populations that are very vascular. You can see their entire venous system and trace it. That's not a good thing. That means nothing's holding that into place to give it that like structure to push that blood back. And that's simple circulatory system.
Yeah.
That's like the least important system as far as I'm concerned.
That's awesome. So when y'all get kids here, I know y'all get great athletes, but are a lot of them like the soccer players where they haven't, they're not physically super strong and you have to really work on that? Or?
Yeah, it's both, right?
Yeah.
So even the weightlifters that we recruit, I say this all the time, like as the recruiting aspect of it, we don't recruit weightlifters.
Mm-hmm.
We recruit good people who happen to be weightlifters.
I love that.
Teaching them how to lift is easy.
Right.
That's actually the simple part. I've been doing that since I was 15 years old. Like that's the easy part. The hard part is actually getting them to do it correctly and getting them to buy in on it.
Right.
And a lot of people, people are afraid of hard work.
Yes.
It's difficult, and that's usually what separates the good from the greats and the greats from the elites.
Right.
And I have this like saying, and I feel kind of bad sometimes, but I'm like, it's okay. I didn't want to be good either. Right? And I'm like, I giggle, but I'm like, or some people will say like, what do you know? And I'm like, well, I made it to 3 world championships. I kind of have a good idea.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, now they're willing to listen. And that's sometimes the difficult part about getting buy-in is everyone has a different strategy to do that, right? Whether it's I've been there, or I know how to get there, or you trust me intellectually or physically, whatever.
Right.
But you have to get the other person to buy into what you're doing. You can write the perfect workout program in the world. If they don't do it, it won't matter.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, in my world, I see people mostly over 40, and like, what's the best exercise? I was like, whatever you're gonna do.
Yeah.
Like, what exercise will you do?
It's squats, though.
Yeah, I agree. It's squats. It's squats, though. But for them, like, just do something. And that's what I told somebody the other day. I said, hey, if you go out and if you spend 30 minutes a day exercising, you're doing more than 95% of everybody else.
Yeah.
And she's like, huh? I'm like, yes. Do you think? I'm like, so she lives in Bossier. I was like, do you think everybody on this street exercises? Well, probably a lot of people are like, no, they don't.
No.
I was like, I promise you they don't.
Nope.
I was like, exercise.
Yeah.
She's like, I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
But it's the truth. It's sad. But
with Louisiana and the Shreveport-Bossier population too, there's a lot of things that are moving against us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that are not supporting wellness. Water is a big one right now,
yes,
right? Brown water is
Yeah.
not okay to drink. Air quality, our air quality is like some of the worst in the country. I'm from New Jersey, and like I looked it up and I figured like, all right, New Jersey, it's got to be horrible. We have better air quality where I grew up in New Jersey than we do in Shreveport.
Wow.
And that really surprised me, and it broke my heart a little bit too, because it's like, with all these things working against us, right? We have like a high obesity rate, right? Low IQ status. Like, what are we doing to lift up our neighbors to help them out? How many times are people walking around the neighborhood where someone's sitting in their garage and it's like, you want to come walk with us?
Right.
Because when I walk the dog, I do that all the time. There's he's an older gentleman, Marine vet, and I'm walking the dog, and every time I'm like, hey, Jim, you want to come with us? I'm good. And he cracks open another beer, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of things that are working against us in Shreveport, Bossier area, but I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think people like yourself, people like myself that are trying to lift everyone else up around us, it's important to have, and we have the community here if we all work together on it, instead of pointing fingers at everybody else, knowing that there's 3 more pointing back at myself. That's one of the things I love about living here, honestly, is like I feel like we can make a big difference if we can make a big difference. Right. A rising tide lifts all ships.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of my favorite quotes. And starting this podcast, so I think this is like my 5th podcast that I've done. And I did self-publishing for a while. I was like, I was done with PT. But anyway, So I've interviewed a lot of people, but the thing that I've noticed in the last few months doing this is everybody wants to help.
Yeah.
So I thought there were like, 2 direct primary care doctors in town and 2 concierge doctors. Well, there's 10.
Right.
And I've interviewed almost every single one of them, and they're all like, oh yeah. And I'm like, hey, do you know this doctor? No, I haven't met him yet. Like, oh, I'd love to meet him. I don't want to take his patients. I want to see if we can work together.
Right.
And that's been the biggest thing to me, and the most encouraging is no one has said, oh yeah, Dr. Sutton, he's horrible.
Right.
Like that Jeremy PT guy, he's stupid. Like
Sure.
nobody has said that. They said, oh, I'd love to meet them, see how we can work together.
Right.
And I've even had a couple docs and a counselor say, hey, how can I partner with you and work together with you? And that's what we need.
Right.
Because we've got enough division.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah, it's easy.
It's everywhere.
Right.
So let's work together.
I think not only professionals working together, but I also think like people working again.
No, keep going.
People working together with the patients, or who would be the patients. Like people have come in before and like, oh, Mr. Adams and this, that, call me Aaron.
Right.
Like, it's simple things like that like, we are all in this community together. I am not better than you. You are not better than me. We are all together on this planet, put here for a reason, clearly. How are we supporting each other?
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things that we do in the lab is we do a lot of exercise testing for athletes. The people that we open the lab to for free is high school kids in lower income areas.
I love it.
Because they don't have access to it. They can't afford it. They don't even know that this existed 5 miles away from their home. Yeah. Those are the kids that we need to start helping, because all of the bad neighborhoods that no one wants to go into, get them out of it. Get them into something else where they can go away, leave Shreveport, and then look back and be like, man, that place was actually pretty good. Yeah. There's a lot of opportunity in Shreveport and Bossier. Yeah. And have them take advantage of it and hopefully come back and help that. You can tend a garden. It's very, very easy, but it's time consuming. Yeah. But everybody wants the tomatoes.
That's right. Yeah.
It's just I really think we have to start putting in the work in the individuals and the youth specifically, because that's who matters. Sure. We are going to die way faster, hopefully, than all of those kids.
That's right.
And I want to leave this place way better than when I came in.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a Cumberland Garden over in Bossier where it's a community place. They bought a couple of lots in a neighborhood and they have a garden and they make all kinds of stuff and they give it away to people. And then I took a guy one time and we cut this lady's tree down or cut a limb off of it or something, and his father-in-law got mad at me and I was like, why? He said, well, you went into this neighborhood, it's dangerous. And I'm like, well, people in the good neighborhoods don't need help.
Right.
Like the guy on the golf course can pay for somebody to cut his tree.
Right.
This lady needed some help.
Right.
I'm like, if I get shot helping somebody, then
I did the right thing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't want to get shot, but who cares?
Yeah.
So I agree with you, because gosh, we need to be helping the people that need help.
Right. And the other thing too is like, there's a culture in specifically the South that I didn't really understand coming from outside, was the resistance to ask for help.
Yeah.
Or to accept help when not asked. Yeah. There's like this pride, which is great, right? I mean, you roll down any street, you're seeing LSU flags everywhere, right? We have pride here in buckets.
Yes.
I think what would be better to have, and I can't quite think of the word for it, is just to be able to ask for help or at least accept it.
Have some humility.
Humility, thank you.
Yeah.
And I don't have it. I'm just as bad as the next person. Like, hey, you need help, like with the storms last year, right? You need help cutting that? Nah, I'm good. Yeah. And I stopped doing that. Yes, I do need help. How long can you help me for? Right. What do you feel comfortable doing? Right. And then I meet all these awesome people, and I never would have met them had I just said, no, I'm good. Yeah. But there's, again, the community part of it. Mm-hmm. It's like letting people in. Yeah. Not everyone's trying to hurt us.
Right. So my grandfather, who was the sweetest man on this planet, my favorite person that's ever lived.
What was his name?
His name was Jackie.
Jackie.
Yeah, and so I named my son after him. My son's name's Jack. And so he would tell me, he would say, my name's Jeremiah. And I go by Jeremiah, but he would say, Jeremiah, be humble. And he would say humble because he's Southern. Like, it's humble. Yeah, he's like, be humble. But he would tell me that all the time. But it's the truth. Like, we need to have more humility, but also and be able to ask for help. And I think you're right. Like, I hate asking for help.
Hate it.
But people want to bless you or serve you.
Mm-hmm.
And if they offer to help you, then they want to.
Right.
Like, I've never offered to help anybody that I don't want help.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just not going to do it.
One of the things that we used to do in acupuncture school is well, I'll say it as a first person story. So I had trouble receiving acknowledgement, right? Oh, Aaron, you did such a good job today. All right, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Right? Think about how dismissive it is to you to just be like, thanks, no problem. That's rude. So what I had as a practice was when someone would give me a compliment or acknowledgement, most of the time I'd be like, I'm sorry. Can you say that again so I can accept it? Not one person ever said no.
Right.
And they would say, and I would accept it. And the relationship grew stronger because then they felt acknowledged in the fact that they were giving that acknowledgement. And it just works like that. It's crazy.
That's right.
Like, imagine if we all did that a little bit.
That's why life's better if you build on relationships instead of, whatever else. So, awesome. Well, Aaron, I think it's been a great conversation. I don't want to keep your time much more, but
you're good.
I thank you so much for this. If there's one thing you could just talk about, the last thing that's on your mind, whatever it is important to you, go ahead.
Love thy neighbor.
Okay.
Yeah. Love it. Like, love your neighbor, know your neighbors. If you don't know your neighbors, go ask. They'll be happy to tell you about themselves, especially in Shreveport. It's actually awesome. So
I love that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, man. It was a pleasure.